They cut me from the will because I was adopted, so I took the one thing they couldn't replace. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I sat in the lawyer's office, my hands cold, my heart beating fast. I had just lost my parents, the only ones I ever knew, and now I was about to hear what they had left behind. I wasn't expecting much, just something small. A letter maybe, a necklace, a kind word. Instead, I got silence. The will was read, and my name wasn't in it. Not once. Everything, the house, the money, the cars, the business, went to Damon, their biological son, the golden boy, the one who never called unless he needed something, the one who disappeared when Dad got sick. I took care of Dad, not Damon. I sat by his hospital bed, cleaned up after him, fed him when he couldn't move. I was there, and none of it mattered. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. "This is the most recent version of the will," he said, eyes flicking toward me and quickly away again. Damon didn't even try to hide his smirk. "Guess it's what they wanted," he said with a shrug, like he hadn't just erased me from my own family. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, frozen, like someone had flipped a switch and turned me off. Adopted. That's all I was now. Not a daughter, not a sister, just a word on a forgotten piece of paper. When I walked out of that office, the air felt different, sharp. I went to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the steering wheel. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from anger. Cold, steady anger. Not loud, not wild, just quiet and certain. They didn't think I would fight. They thought I'd accept it, disappear. But they were wrong. Damon could have the money, the house, the fake friends. He could keep all of it. But there was one thing he could never buy, one thing he could never fake or take away. I wasn't born a Voss, but I gave them everything. My childhood, my loyalty, my love. I took care of them like they were mine. And now I would make sure the world knew the truth, who I really was to this family. I wouldn't scream or beg for a place. I'd take back what mattered, piece by piece, starting now. They wanted me to feel like I never existed, but they forgot something important. I'm still here. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like home anymore. After the funeral, people filled every room, dressed in black, sipping wine, talking in hushed voices. I stood near the hallway, watching as they surrounded Damon like he was some kind of hero. They shook his hand, hugged him, told him how proud his parents would be. No one looked at me. No one asked how I was doing. I had been in this house for most of my life. I knew every corner, every creaky floorboard. I had cleaned the kitchen when I was 10, helped Mum decorate for Christmas, and sat with Dad in the living room when he couldn't remember what day it was. But now, I felt like a stranger in my own story. Damon walked past me without a word, not even a glance, just kept smiling, holding a glass of champagne like he was the king of something. I followed the sound of voices into the dining room and stopped just before the doorway. "She's adopted, not a real Voss," someone whispered. I froze. Another voice replied, "Well, the will said it all, didn't it? Damon's the real son." I stepped back slowly, heart pounding. I didn't know who said it. I didn't want to know. I just turned and walked away. I ended up in the kitchen. It was empty except for me. The table in the center still had the same scratch from when I spilled hot cocoa and tried to clean it with a fork. I ran my fingers over it. That little scar had been there for years, just like me, but no one else seemed to remember. I helped raise Damon. When he was scared of thunderstorms, it was me who sat with him in the hallway. When he got grounded, it was me who snuck him snacks. I was the one who stayed when things got hard. I was there when Dad forgot his own name and needed help walking. Damon never showed up, but now he was the one they all celebrated. I wasn't even given a seat at the table, but that's fine. I didn't need their chairs, their smiles, or their fake words. They could keep their party. They'd see soon enough. I may not be their real family, but I was the one who never left. The house was quiet now. The guests were gone. The fake sympathy drained from the walls, and all that remained was dust and silence. I stood in my childhood room, unsure where to begin. My old posters were still up, the bookshelf untouched, and the small window still looked out onto the garden. I used to weed with Dad on Sunday mornings. It should have felt comforting. It didn't. I started packing slowly. Old sweaters, photo albums, little knickknacks I thought I'd forgotten about. Every drawer I opened brought back something. A laugh, a fight, a bedtime story. All of it seemed so far away now, like it happened to someone else. I pulled a heavy book off the shelf, To Kill a Mockingbird. The same copy my mum gave me when I was 14. I used to read it under the covers with a flashlight. As I flipped it open, something thudded to the floor. A piece of paper. No, an envelope. Torn open, crumpled a bit. Hidden inside a hollowed-out section of the book. I stared at it for a moment before I picked it up. My name was on the front, in Mum's handwriting. My throat tightened. I unfolded the letter carefully. The paper was worn and faded, like it had been hidden for a long time. I began to read. Taryn, if you're reading this, then I wasn't brave enough to give it to you. And for that, I'm sorry. You've always been my daughter, not by blood, but in every way that matters. You made this house a home. You were always the steady one, the one who loved without asking for anything in return. But Damon, he got into our heads, especially your father's. He said things about you that weren't true, that you were just after the money, that asking about your birth records meant you were planning to leave us. I didn't believe him, not truly, but I stayed silent when he convinced us to change the will. I let it happen, and it was wrong. You deserved better, and I hope someday you can forgive me. My hands trembled. I sank onto the bed, staring at the letter. All this time, I'd thought they'd simply stopped loving me, but it wasn't that simple. Damon had poisoned them against me, used my curiosity about my own past as a weapon, and they'd fallen for it. But the truth was here now, in my hands, and no one else knew it existed. They tried to bury this letter, hide their guilt inside a book on a forgotten shelf. But now I knew the truth. He stole my place in this family, and I was going to make sure he never felt safe in it again. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it. Crooked porch, peeling paint, and the smell of pine and dust. It sat quiet and alone by the edge of the lake, like a forgotten piece of someone's heart. Dad used to bring me here every summer, just the two of us, fishing, telling stories, building fires and burning marshmallows until they turned black. Damon never came. He said it was boring. I hadn't been back in years, but something pulled me here. Maybe it was the letter, or maybe I just needed to feel something real again. Away from the cold mansion, away from fake smiles and lies. Inside it was still a mess, chairs stacked in the corner, old blankets, cobwebs stretching from the windows, but my name was carved into the wood above the fireplace. Taryn, 2007. I ran my fingers across it. Dad watched me do it once. He smiled when I finished, told me, "Now it's yours forever." I didn't expect to find anything, but when I stepped on a floorboard near the kitchen table, it creaked different, hollow. I pried it up, hands shaking. Inside was a small metal box, old and rusted. I opened it and found an old cassette tape and a little note in my father's handwriting. "Play this if you're ever wondering where you stand." I drove back into town just to buy a cassette player. Couldn't wait. Back at the cabin, I sat on the floor, hit play, and listened. "Hey, Taryn, if you're hearing this, I guess I'm not around anymore. I wanted you to know something. Something I couldn't say loud enough when I should have." There was a long pause. Then his voice again, rough but warm. "If this family has a legacy, it's you. Not Damon, not the money, not the name. You. You're the reason this place ever meant something." I bit my lip to stop from crying. He continued, "They'll try to forget you, but I won't. This cabin is yours. Always was. I never put it in the will. I wanted it to stay in your hands, no matter what." I hit stop. They left me nothing, except the one place they didn't know about. But that was their mistake. This cabin wasn't just a memory. It was proof that I was never the forgotten one. They were. I sat across from the lawyer, in a small, quiet office that smelled like old paper and fresh coffee. Her name was Renee Porter. Sharp eyes, calm voice, and a reputation for cleaning up other people's messes. I told her everything. The funeral, the will, the letter from my adoptive mother, and the cabin. Every detail. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just laid it out like evidence. When I finished, Renee nodded slowly. "You want to know if the will can be contested?" "No," I said. "I want to know if it can be undone." She went to work, quietly, discreetly. No letters to Damon, no big legal motions, just digging, paperwork, signatures, dates, witnesses. She combed through every version of the will, pulled records from the county office, even contacted the notary, who supposedly handled the final one, the one that cut me out. 3 weeks later, she called me in. "The most recent will," she said, laying out the paperwork, "is invalid." My breath caught. "What?" "It wasn't properly notarized. 2 witnesses signed, but the notary's stamp is missing. It doesn't hold up legally, which means—" I leaned forward. "The previous will stands," she finished. The one that names you a 35% heir. I stared at her. I wanted to cry, or laugh, or scream. But all I felt was cold, like I'd just opened a door and found winter on the other side. He doesn't know, does he? I asked. Number. And we won't tell him. Not yet. So I waited. I watched. Damon started spending like the money would never run out. New car, lavish vacations, champagne dinners posted on social media. He moved into the mansion and remodeled everything. Knocked down Dad's old office to build a gym. Sold our mother's jewelry. Hired a private chef. He had no idea. Every time I saw one of his posts, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not even revenge, just a steady building sense of balance returning, like gravity was slowly correcting itself. Renee and I kept working in the background, preparing, gathering, making sure every paper was in order, every signature solid, no more shadows, no more lies. Damon thought he'd won. He thought I was gone, forgotten, erased. But I wasn't. I was still here. And now I had the law on my side. He was burning through a fortune that wasn't his, and soon he'd have to answer for every dollar, because ghosts don't stay buried forever, and neither do the living. I met him at a quiet cafe tucked between two forgotten bookstores downtown. Mr. Alden had worked for my family for nearly 20 years, until he suddenly disappeared right after the will was changed. I always thought it was strange. Now, I knew it wasn't just a coincidence. He looked older than I remembered, tired eyes, nervous hands. But when he saw me, he smiled softly. I always liked you, Taryn, he said. You were the only one who ever said thank you. We sat down, and I didn't waste time. I told him I knew the will wasn't valid, and that Damon had manipulated our parents. His smile faded, replaced by something tight and cautious. I wasn't supposed to say anything, he whispered, leaning in. But I was fired because I asked too many questions about the new will, and the accounts Damon started moving. What accounts? He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Inside were printouts, notes, and flagged transactions. Companies I'd never heard of, but all with names linked to my father's businesses. Slowly, I realized what I was looking at. Shell company, he said. Fake one. Damon used them to move funds under your father's name. He started before your dad passed away, when he was already sick and confused. Your parents didn't even know. My stomach turned, not just because of the fraud, but because Damon did it before Dad died, while I was taking care of him, while Damon was out pretending to grieve. And now, Alden said, he controls the estate, which means all of that dirty money is tied directly to him. He's the one who'll be held responsible. I stared down at the pages. The trap was already set. Damon had walked right into it. Will you help me? I asked quietly. He nodded. I've been waiting for someone to care enough to ask. When I left the cafe, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even angry anymore. I felt focused. Damon had stolen from our father. He'd rewritten the truth. But now, with every signature and every fake company, he'd written his own downfall. And I was going to make sure the world read every word. The mansion used to feel like home. Even when the people inside didn't, the walls remembered me. The wooden staircase still creaked the same way when I walked up barefoot. I knew which floorboards groaned in winter, and which window caught the morning light best. But none of that mattered now. Damon had the keys, and the mortgage. What he didn't know, though, was how deep the roots of this place went, and how weak they'd become. I found out about the loan by accident. I was talking to a lawyer about estate taxes when he mentioned the Voss mansion wasn't fully owned. My parents had used it as collateral for a business expansion. When Dad got sick, the payments started slipping. Then Damon inherited it and never checked the paperwork. He thought it was his forever, but he never read the fine print. I asked my lawyer to look deeper. The loan was now under pressure, one missed payment away from default. The bank was ready to sell the debt, quietly. So, I created a shell company. Nothing fancy, just something clean and quiet. I named it Elmroot Holdings, after the big elm tree in the backyard where I used to read as a kid. Then I bought the debt. It wasn't cheap, but I had some inheritance from my grandmother, the only person in that house who ever made me feel like I belonged. I used that money without a second thought. A week later, the first foreclosure notice went out. I made sure the tone was formal, cold, unreadable, just like the ones I used to get when I was old enough to realize I wasn't truly their daughter. Damon must have panicked. I could imagine it, pacing in Dad's old study, yelling into his phone, blaming everyone but himself. I didn't need to be there to see it. I waited. He tried to negotiate with the bank. My shell company refused. He tried to stall. We pushed harder, all while I sat quietly, sipping tea, reading old letters, and remembering how they used to say, Don't touch that. It's not yours. Now nothing was his. The house looked strong from the outside, but the foundation was already cracked, full of termites, both real and human. I just gave it a little push. He thought I was gone, forgotten, cut out, but I was still here, in the roots, the walls, the quiet paper trail he never noticed, and I was taking it all back. Taryn sat cross-legged on the floor of her mother's old bedroom, surrounded by dust, silence, and the lingering scent of lavender. She hadn't planned to come back here, but something pulled her in. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe grief, maybe something deeper. The jewelry box was exactly where she remembered, in the top drawer of the vanity, behind a stack of silk scarves. It was small, silver, and engraved with a rose. She opened it slowly, expecting to find the usual, old brooches, hairpins, maybe a pair of pearl earrings, but tucked beneath a false bottom was a folded paper and a photograph. She stared at it, her breath caught in her chest. The paper was her birth certificate, her real one, not the copy with her adoptive parents' names. This one listed her birth mother's name, and it was blank where her father's should have been. Her name, Taryn Elise, was there in bold, clean ink. It felt strange to see her identity printed like that, quiet and official, after years of being told she didn't belong. But it was the photo that broke her. A young woman, her adoptive mother, sat in a hospital chair, cradling a tiny baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. The woman looked tired, but her eyes were soft, full of love. Taryn flipped the photo over and read the words written in delicate, familiar handwriting. My daughter, always. Tears slipped down her cheeks. All the years of cold looks, unspoken rules, and quiet rejection faded for a moment. She wasn't just the adopted one. There had been a time, maybe even just a moment, when she was truly wanted, loved, claimed. Damon could take the house, the money, the status, but he couldn't take this. He would never understand the weight of a single photo, never feel the way Taryn did, sitting on a bedroom floor with proof that she did belong, that someone chose her. Everything Damon had was built on entitlement. But this legacy, was made of something stronger. She wiped her tears, tucked the photo into her coat pocket, and stood up. She was done searching for value in other people's eyes. She had her proof now, and it was priceless. The room was quiet, but the tension inside it buzzed like a storm about to break. Damon sat near the head of the long wooden table, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than some people's monthly income. He wore that same smug smile he'd been flashing since the funeral, like the world owed him something, and he was finally collecting. Taryn walked in calmly, wearing all black, her expression unreadable. She nodded politely to the attorney and sat on the opposite end of the table. Damon didn't even glance her way. He hadn't spoken to her since the day of the funeral. Not a word, not even when the foreclosure warning landed at his door. He thought it was all still his. The lawyer, an older man with kind eyes and a stack of documents in front of him, cleared his throat. Per the notice served 2 weeks ago, the original will of Charles Voss, dated 3 years prior to the amended version, has been reinstated as legally binding. Due to improper notarization of the updated will, the estate now reverts to the distribution outlined in the original document. Damon shifted in his seat. The lawyer continued reading. 50% of the Voss estate, including financial accounts, the family business shares and personal assets, will go to Ms. Taryn Voss. Damon let out a laugh. This is a joke, right? The lawyer didn't even blink. He went on, detailing the properties now under Taryn's control, the vacation home, the investment accounts, the company shares. Every line read was another cut into Damon's illusion of power. Taryn said nothing. The room grew heavier with each word. And finally, the lawyer said, reaching for a single envelope, a personal letter written by Mr. Charles Voss, intended to be read aloud only if the original will was reinstated. He opened it. To my daughter Taryn, you were not born into this family, but you gave it more than I ever did. Your loyalty, your patience, your care, especially in my final days, will never be forgotten. If Damon ever told you otherwise, know this. I saw the truth. This legacy is yours because you earned it. You are my daughter, and I am proud of you. The lawyer folded the letter and placed it on the table. Damon's face had gone pale. He stood up so quickly his chair screeched across the floor. Without a word, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Taryn didn't flinch. She sat quietly, the words still echoing in her mind. She didn't take back the family name. She took back her place. The cemetery was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed gently on her chest. Taryn walked alone, a single photo clutched in her hand, and a folded piece of paper tucked into her coat pocket. The sky was grey, and a soft breeze rustled the dry leaves around the Voss family plot. She stopped in front of two headstones, Charles and Evelyn Voss. The names still felt strange in her mouth now, not because they weren't hers, but because of everything that had happened since their passing. The betrayal, the lies, the cruelty of being cut out because she wasn't really family. But she didn't come here for anger. She knelt slowly and placed the photo at the base of the headstone. It was the one she'd found in the jewelry box, her as a baby, in Evelyn's arms. My daughter, always. The words written on the back had changed everything. In a world where papers and wills had been used to erase her, that picture had brought her back. Next, she took out the unsigned version of the will, the one that Damon had manipulated into existence. She didn't need it anymore. She let it rest beside the photo and whispered, "You may not have gotten everything right, but you did love me, somewhere in your own way." She stood up, brushed the grass from her knees, and turned to walk away. Damon was gone, broke, disgraced. The mansion was no longer his. The business shares had crumbled with his reputation. He had no power left to steal, no spotlight to stand in. For all the things he tried to take, he could never take what mattered most: her sense of self. Taryn didn't return to the city. She drove upstate, to the old summer cabin, now fully hers. The porch creaked the same way it had when she was a child. Inside, the air still smelled faintly of cedar and dust. She opened the windows, lit a fire, and sat in her father's old chair. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was peace. She had been many things: forgotten, rejected, underestimated, but never broken. She was never their blood, but she was always his daughter. And now, finally, she was her own. Do you think Taryn did the right thing by walking away from the Voss name and starting over on her own terms? Or should she have fought harder to stay part of the family that raised her? Tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one.